Welcome to a new episode of the Creative Industry Insight podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. Today, we welcome hair, makeup, and prosthetics designer Donald Mowat, who joins us to talk about their work on Man on Fire. Donald will talk us through the various looks he created for the characters of the show. Please be warned there are heavy spoilers in this episode. Now let's jump into the conversation with Donald. Hi, Donald. Thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It took a minute, but we figured it out.
I know that, which is my bad. Which is my bad because I think holidays and job searches and other stuff getting in the way, and also life as well. Yeah, sometimes some of that stuff catches up to you without you realizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're here to talk about Man on Fire, which has come out recently on Netflix. Before we jump into the nitty-gritty of it all, how have you found the reception to the show?
Well, it's. I thought it was very good. I was quite excited for it because when you work on something, you never know. You downplay it, but it turned out very, very well indeed. And I was happy, and the ratings were good, and the reviews were. I would say, they were good. Were they amazing? No. Were they terrible? No. We produced and made a very entertaining, suspenseful kind of show. And it's still on Netflix. Every time I go to look at something, I see it's still in the top 10. And but I think, what happens now for us, especially artisans, is that we kind of, unless the studio really push, with say something, I'm just going to say Severance or The Crown, that are very big, high profile, they're not going to push that hard. They're going to go for the sure bets. And it feels, for people who do what I do, the designers, cinematographers, a makeup, a costume, it makes us feel a little bit like, really? So I think, I'm a little bit annoyed, to be honest, that I've had this happen on other television projects and films as well. It just happens where it costs money. So I think people listening who are in the industry, we have to really help each other. That if I see a great film and I go, God, that makeup is fantastic, the sound is whatever, that we help promote it. And therefore, I think podcasts and things and YouTube are really good for us that don't have the means to say, take a for your consideration ad out in the cover of Screen, International or Variety.
I think as well, sometimes with shows, because they're so ruled by like algorithms and whatnot, it's sometimes they're just put there and they kind of just let people discover them themselves. And I guess if it's worked with a couple of shows that have become so huge, then people they're like, well, you just trust it and you build it from there. I do feel like that's a bit of a shame because you don't, some of these bigger shows that get a bigger push, whilst there's other shows that kind of just, I don't want to say get dumped, but they kind of just get put on the shelf for people to find. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, stuff grows organically and you get those cult films or TV shows, but that's also because it's word of mouth and people spread around. Yeah, I think for this as well, because it's based on a book, it's also had a couple of iterations as well. Scott Glenn film in, I think, the 80s, and then you've got the Tony Scott film in the noughties. Mm-hmm. So, you've got a sort of audience there and people can have that brand recognition. So, why not push it a bit more and have people see it? But if it's still in the top 10 after a number of weeks, then, that is a good thing and people are resonating with it. But yes, I totally get your point as well. And sometimes it is a bit of a shame. Going back to the beginning, how did the project come about and what made you want to take it on?
Well, I'd actually been in the UK. I'd finished something. I'd finished Tron, Ares, which was a great experience. And we'd finished that and I'd had some time off. And to be honest, we were in, I think, the midst of the strikes were brewing, as everybody knows, those dreadful strikes, they were brewing. It was all in the mail, so to speak. I'd been in the UK doing a bit of teaching, visiting family, seeing shows, bits and bobs sort of thing. And then I got a call from a great old friend, Ed McDonald, who's a wonderful producer I've known since the 90s from, Three Kings and Sicario. And different films, and he's now in television like almost everybody else. And he rang me up and said, look, there's this thing, Man on Fire. I rang you before to go to Mexico on Mosquito Coast. Wasn't able to. And I thought, Ed, I'd like to. I'm available. We had to work a couple of things out because it was lower budget than what I'd been used to. The fact that it was going to Mexico City, I was a little concerned, and I didn't need to be, because I'd had not great experiences in Budapest and other locations training crew. But in Mexico, they have a very, very strong cinema culture with incredible crews. So once I figured out that I could get a hair, makeup, and prosthetics crew, I was more at ease. And they were really top drawer, wonderful. So I ended up taking the job, and off we went and prepped, and it was good. It was really good.
I think as well, it's like, it's funny sometimes how people reach out when things don't work out, but they still have you in mind for other projects that might come through. I can't imagine what it's like shooting abroad when you're in different places, where the crew, where you still have to train up the crew, because at the same time you're doing your job, but it's everything kind of moves at such a fast pace that you still need to teach someone. I can imagine that being quite stressful and just like difficult at the same time, because you're trying not to get like the snowball effect, not to get taken up by the avalanche of like being delayed with your filming and whatnot.
The thing is, you do sometimes, and it's very difficult. There are great crews all over the world. I mean, film people are film people no matter where you go. It's just in some places they're also used to doing very big established sort of American studio movies, and which also creates a false sense of, I don't know what, but I didn't train that way. I mean, I came out of low budget. I started in small indie things in Canada and then the UK and co-productions. So we learned how to be very fast and work effectively. And, what do they say? Work, don't work harder, work smarter. And so that's what I come from. So I can get a little frustrated if I go where people are used to having a makeup tent with 30 or 40 makeup artists and hairstylists in there, to something where you might have 2 or 3. And I think training people up makes one a little bit, you kind of want to stick with the same people, and you can have some problems. Not always. I've been very lucky. I'm going to say 90% of the time, but I've also had some really rotten experiences, and to be truthful, and you just think, and that's, to be fair, why some people, if they're London based or LA based or New York based, don't want to leave home, because they just, it's hard enough. It's hard enough, 14 hours a day, 15 hours a day. Why add to it? And then you can't, get in your own bed. So there's a huge thing that people don't realize for the crew, especially. The actors get to go home, they get tickets, they get everything done for them. God knows they work hard for it, but so do we.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like there's, especially like, so with like hair and makeup, I guess along with sort of like a base AD and also unit drivers, you're like some of the first people there as well, getting everybody ready and making sure you get the timings. And then also you probably have to make sure that you follow like some of these SAG guidelines, or also they might be contracted as well. Yeah, it's a massive, like, it's not just the creative side, it's also the sort of juggling of timings and whatnot.
Well, especially as a designer, you very much work. That's why I say we're producers, because you are handling how long, get it made, getting prosthetics, wigs, makeup, testing. It's really your show to some degree. A lot of people take credit for it, but in the end, I'm going out looking for the stuff. I'm researching it. I have to come back and say, hey, we're going to try this, or we're going to use this wig maker or this makeup effect shop to do something.
Yeah. And sort of going back to Man of Fire itself, because you're listed as the makeup, hair designer, and also prosthetics designer. I know we were talking about this off camera a little bit, but when you're listed as all three, how easy is that then for you to be able to pitch your ideas and designs to the showrunner and directors and producers, instead of having potentially three department heads?
I find it more practical. I think it's cost effective. You don't lose work. You're not losing staff. In fact, you can gain. It's just that you can get more people hands-on creating, doing the work that's required. If you're in a world where it's, where it's a build, where you're building puppets and creatures, a little bit different because that takes a full army. But when you're doing the types of things I've done, which are like very mild, like prosthetics that are certain character things, wounds, out of kit things, it just makes it so much easier to have one person running it, designing it, directing it, going, because that's really the job, is to hire great people and put together a team. And I think when you do it the other way, you can often get people at cross purposes, not to be mean, but you just sort of, to me, I always equate it for working for the DMV or the National Treasury, where you're just, there's 5 people essentially doing the same thing, shuffling bits of paper. And I've become in my older age a little bit like, why? And actors really would like being in one trailer. I've just discovered on a job where people had different trailers for makeup and hair. And I thought it was the most preposterous thing I've ever heard in my life.
Wow.
Why would you go in one trailer and get your face done and then another trailer and get your hair or your wig done? I just thought, well, unless you're doing some epic 15th century thing, or you're doing, the court of Louis, or you're doing, but why? You should be in there together, working together as a creative flow. But that's me. Not everyone will agree with me. Most will, though, I think, if they ask themselves. The time factor. Just an actor leaving one trailer to go to the other is 5 minutes. Oh, then I'll stop and go 10-1. Oh, I'll get a cup of coffee. I'll have a little ciggy. I'll pet the dog. I'll go talk to so-and-so. It's how it is.
Yeah, I feel like that's just also, again, time consuming. That's just crazy to think that you'd be jumping from one trade to the other. But then also, I feel like, if, weather's going to play an element to it. Once it's absolutely hammering it down, so then surely your work is then slightly gets, it gets spoiled a little bit. Yeah, I don't really think of like why somebody does that, but okay. But with something like Big Man on Fire, I just want to follow up on that as well. When you're involved in all 3, do you find that it's more stressful, or is the stress just the same if you were just looking after one side of things?
I think it's the same, because sometimes if I'm just doing the makeup and there's an issue or a problem with the hair or something, you're still involved somehow. And the producers inevitably come to the most experienced person in the trailer or on the floor. And typically that will now be me. It used to not be. But you'll be on a job and they'll say, God, Donald, what do we do? We're having a problem, or this, or even the prosthetics people, the really good ones and solid ones will work with us, together. I think when it gets very separate is kind of, it's a whole other thing. But I do think, look, it's stressful regardless. You get onto a job and there's, it's down to time. I'll be asked today for tomorrow, how long for cast number 2? Now, a lot of people don't work well. I have to be able to say 25 minutes, 30 minutes. And you have to live by that, because the studio are informed. There is a production report. And I think this is the part a lot of people don't understand. Everyone has to report to someone, including me. And I think it can be very stressful. And I feel it sometimes. But at the same time, I see it in a lot of newer people, how they stress and their anxiety kind of grows when they're under this sort of, I said 40 minutes to do a makeup and you took 60. That's actually going to be duly noted. I hate to tell people that listening, but that is the harsh reality. If a lighting cameraman says, I need an hour to light that set, and it takes 2 hours, he or she will hear about it.
Yeah, exactly. And again, time is money, especially if you're on location as well, where you're there for one day. You need to make sure that you're sort of in and out.
On Man on Fire, the great thing is we had a very small, very humble trailer. Very humble, I must say. I think the only extravagance we brought in there was really good, 2 very, very good barber style makeup chairs, the really old fashioned but new, for Yaya, because his back, he just said, I can't sit in one of those and spend 45 minutes in here. And I understand that. And he's very physical, had a lot of action. So that was his big request. So we got these huge things you could barely move around, but they were good. I could never move one. I'd have to get one of the guys from transport to help. But we had 2 of those so that Yaya could jump from hair, with Nick doing his barbering and his hair, and then me with the makeup. And we had a wonderful trailer. It was not fancy, let me tell you. I think it was, but I decorated, put pictures up everywhere for the mood of Brazil. And we had a wonderful trailer with all my team, Carla and Farfan and Corey and Nick and the girls, the French sisters, I call them. We were all in there together. And we had a second trailer for overflow, for day players, occasionally for some background or specialty like police and things like that. And it was a wonderful experience.
I think as well, like if you're having places that double up, or even like budget restraints, you're going to use your space wisely. And as you're saying, you've got your main cast trailer and then one for day players, just so then you can have your setup and understand what's happening. And I think as well, like because prosthetics plays a part in it all, you kind of need a little space for that to be to have its own area as well, because of how much work that goes into prosthetics. And depending on, like in this case, probably ones with like a bit more gruesome with blood as well. You need that sort of space so that it doesn't mix with someone who's just getting their normal face stuff.
Yeah. Well, I did all those out of kit makeups on Tiago, when he's tortured, Osmar, the other character, I can't remember his name, most of them right there in the trailer with everybody else. So I'd have Yaya in one chair and then do the other one. And it was great fun. The hardest thing was that we had to go to Brazil, which I loved, but we worked out of a hotel suite, a big ballroom type thing. We shared a room with the ADs, which is pretty funny. So we did the makeup in sort of old school director chairs, which are not comfortable at all, and okay lighting, but we had our setup in Rio at our hotel. And that was great. But we then got on buses and vans and went all over Rio, which was fantastic, and filmed. But we had a little tent set up on location. And in Mexico City, we had our trailer all the time. And then we were at the studio. So we had our 2 trailers with us all the time.
I was curious to know about this on the show. How much does the environment play in how you design and how you apply hair and makeup? Because with somewhere like Brazil, it's going to be a very humid climate. Are you ever worried that sometimes you might test something and it might go completely wrong when they're there?
Yeah. Well, we had, for one thing, so in Mexico City is not as hot as people think. It's very funny I'd been there before. I did a Bond movie there on Spectre. People think, oh my God, it's not at all what you think. When you go to Veracruz and places like that on the coast, on the Caribbean side or Atlantic side, it's very humid. It's like New York City, the most humid New York day, or Miami. But Mexico City is very, very high altitude. It can be very gray. It rains quite a lot. It rained a fair amount. It can be quite cold. The mornings are brutally cold, like Los Angeles can be. And it's smoggy, and you get sunny days, but more often than not, you don't. It's overcast. And we were recreating Brazil in Mexico City, which is an 11-hour flight. It's a very different country with very different climate. Mexico City would be closer to, I'm going to say New Mexico. No, not even, more like LA. And I wanted everyone to look sultry, hot, humid, sweaty, permanently like a shine, a high brilliance on the faces, which does not happen in Mexico. So we put that in all the makeups to give that appearance. And then once we went to Rio, I was like, thank God I did that, because it was so hot and it was rainy and muggy and soupy, and you're just dripping. And sometimes I thought, God, shit, I didn't do enough. And I kept telling my crew, always add water, add shine, use, even if it's Vaseline, put something for brilliance and shimmer and sheen to the skin, because in Brazil, that's how you look.
Yeah, I guess like there's probably that bit of fear as well, knowing that as you said, like, oh, I wish we could done a bit more. But then at the same time, you don't know these things, but then you can kind of play around and have a bit more creative freedom because you're in an environment that's not as hot. But then also, I would think that like continuity might be a bit of a menace when it comes to those things as well, which could be slightly frustrating as well.
Well, sometimes you have to adjust that for lighting or continuity, but really, for the most part, you just want to sell the shot. You want to sell the idea. Yeah, should always look like he's in a heated environment. Either he's on the move, action, he's got too many clothes on, he's got those different clothes he's wearing in Rio. You think, God, you'd be soaking wet by the time you ran through a street. But I love that kind of thing too. It's great fun.
Yeah, and I think as well, like as an actor, like they get an understanding of like what they like environment that they're going to be in, but then also how you're helping them shape their character in the way that they'll be looking. Because I can imagine as well, like the first episode with Greasy is that he's going to look kind of fresh, but then afterwards, when he goes to the present day, he's going to look a little bit more ragged because of all the drinking and the sort of wear and tear that he's put on his body compared to like the first sort of episode. But then you have to sort of show that over the next how many days that you the series takes place, of like what he's doing, how he's taking people on.
Right.
Also the fact that he's not going to wash probably in that time. And
that's right.
It's like little things like that where it probably is funny if you had to say that to someone. But then also it's like, well, no, actually we can muddy him up a bit more and maybe make some of his cuts on his face look a bit infected as well, because if he's not cleaning, then he's not looking after himself, so that can get affected, and we can make that a little bit more gnarly as well. What I want to sort of go back to as well is like just to go to prosthetic side of stuff, because you've got that heat and that sort of environment. Do you have to think about the sort of different silicone that you might use as well? Because is that going to peel off?
Well, yeah, what I learned with, so we had these transfer appliances for Creasy for his back, for where he'd been burned and tortured, So there's burn scars on his, was it his right shoulder? Can't remember. What we were finding was, and we didn't have a huge amount of prosthetics, hence we did not submit it in a prosthetics category, more just in makeup, was that all the out of kit. So on Tiago, when he's being tortured, he's got this little bit on his face that's burning. It's a kind of battery acid on his forehead. That's a little transfer piece. He had one on his body. What we discovered with Karina, who was working with me locally, runs her own makeup effects, very, very good, by the way, in Mexico City. We noticed that the stuff I had made in Europe and shipped over was maybe due to transit and flying, but the very high altitude of Mexico City created some sort of air bubbles in the pieces. So we were looking at them going, what the hell is happening here? And a couple of times I'm like, no, let's get another one. So I ended up having her recast with our molds, redoing a lot of those transfer pieces, which are quite simple. And we call them prosthetics, but they're really more makeup because they're kind of, we call it lick 'em, stick 'em. I mean, they're pretty small, but even the one on his chest, I mean, we resculpted and did that. So on Tiago, where they put that little heart thing in, the little explosive, we had to, because they were getting too bubbly. And so there are different things, but no, for the most part, the problem there is supplies in Mexico City. It's not like if you're in London or Toronto or obviously LA. So, it's getting, I would go back home to LA every once in a while and fill up a suitcase and come back, because I had wigs for doubles, and we had loads of doubles and stand-ins needing wigs and doubles for Creasy and Poe and Alicia Braga, and then all our Brazilians. I couldn't get that hair at all in Mexico City. So I would go back to LA and get all that.
Again, it's amazing how much effort that you've put in
to
it all, and like knowing that like something as simple as like hair, as you said, like if you're in London or New York or LA shooting, you can just pop down to whoever and they can have that sorted for you.
Correct.
Yeah. But then Also about the idea of like having to redo some of the silicon as well. I wonder what this, and this is probably just my brain working. I wonder what the science is. The fact that like maybe it was the altitude that it just sort of fizzled out a bit, or if it was something else. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Just like probably take that on to your next job as well, to be like, actually, we have to be really careful if we're somewhere in high altitude.
Well, that's what you learn on every job. Every single job, you learn something, you know, even now after all these years. So, you know, Man on Fire, I mean, it was such an amazing crew that I had there. I'm really happy and very proud of them. And everybody stepped up and it was really good, you know. Yeah.
What I'm curious to know about as well is like the continuity side, and especially when it comes to sort of action sequences and how things are played out. How do you break something like that down from in your pre-production to then when you're actually shooting? Because there will be moments where somebody takes a punch, they might get, you know, they won't get a black eye straight away, but there might be some damage. But then whilst the sort of fight progresses, it might get a little bit more violent with stab wounds or abrasions. How do you figure that out in the sequence, and how do you work with other departments to be able to facilitate those looks?
I worked really closely with props on this one, which I do often, but we work closely together because we had to do things like the bubbling skin and how we were going to do that. And we try like Alka-Seltzer and different things, you know, adding water to it and what would kind of we'd see on camera, and then cross over with visual effects. So there was that. Working, you know, with costume. I think we had a thumb or a finger cut off or something. Yeah, with his hand behind his back, and then having to tape it where the finger has been cut off, and then tape it down and wrap it and bloody it up and things. And then things like carrying over some blood and sweat almost always. But I think as far as continuity, because I come from a motion picture background, I tend to find in the continuity world, people obsess a bit too much with it, is that you have to sell the moment. If the moment's sweaty in this and it cuts to the next thing where it could be subdued, it's past, the moment's past, you can let things go. But you don't suddenly clean up or stop all perspiration. It's just, you have to move. Blood has to move. Dirt has to move. I disagree with a lot of people in keeping very solid blood and dirt on the face, because it doesn't go that way. Once saliva and sweat, and it's all kind of gross. But I like it to look grittier and more authentic, and less is more, really, because that's how things typically look.
Yeah, of course. And I guess, again, something how my mind works is just thinking how, I wonder how the shoot day went, knowing that in this scene, you know, he gets punched, and the next, you know, how as audience members we're seeing this as the final thing, but just like, I wonder, you know, if take 3 they decided to change it up and then added something in.
Typically, no. I mean, occasionally you'll have to, if something really doesn't work. I had that a bit with the Poe, Billy Boulet's character, where I was worried maybe but Stephen, who was a producer and director for the first episodes, you know, I could, you know, trying to get his attention, and because he was busy in action and stuff, and say, look, are you okay with her? And he was like, whatever you want to do. But I could have used a little bit more help on some of those looks from the powers that be. But really, to be fair to them, they entrusted me and figured I know what I'm doing. And I wish more people would do that, because you're on jobs where people are micromanaging. And I will say on Man on Fire to, you know, all our producers and directors, nobody micromanaged me. There was very little. And I really appreciate that, because I've been on other jobs that you find it's actually offensive that people are so micromanaging other people.
Yeah, I think as well with like the creative side, because it's not, I think because your work is so visual, you can say to someone how a bruise is going to look, right? You can say a bruise is purple, but actually, what does that purple look like on somebody's skin? Everybody's skin is different. How does it play up? And also the fact, like, you could use something that actually that somebody's allergic to that on their skin, so we can't use that. We're going to use something completely different. So that's going to change the color of it as well.
Of course.
And I feel like that's another like big thing that maybe certain people may not understand, because it is such a visual thing. You can't just say what it's going to be.
Well, there are two ways I approach these things. One is, in fact, I taught a little course yesterday, and what was interesting, and I think they really got it, and sometimes newer people don't understand because, of course, why would you? You need the experience. So I kind of said, but there are certain things you go, I am selling it. I have to sell the shot. I'm entrusted to do. Does he look beat up? Okay. Are you going to get into the semantics? Well, he got hit at a 360-degree angle. When people get into that, it starts with an F and ends with a D, because you go, the audience don't care. They just want to enjoy. They're eating the popcorn. They're with their family or friends watching the show and going, wow, look, he really got beat up. And I think it's important because I've been on jobs where I've had to say to somebody, especially like military advisors, I usually love working with a nurse, because when I'm doing beat up or somebody's in the hospital, the nurses always give me the best advice. And I take it as the greatest compliment. If a registered nurse said, Donald, that looks really good, or a doctor. But when you get military advisors or police or people saying, well, if it's a 9mm shot, the actor's not holding the gun right, or something's wrong, you start to get into such semantics, and we call it hysterical accuracy, that you're going to lose the plot and the point. A real bruise, the way a real bruise looks on your leg when you've banged it up against something, would never photograph correctly for a film or television show. End of story. A fake one will sell better optically. I don't know the answers. I've thought about it hundreds of times. Do people sweat in certain situations? No, but they're cold and clammy. So how do you sell it? So I think it's things like that that are exciting. And Man on Fire had a lot of that, where Billy's kind of in shock and beat up and dirty. And then how do you can easily go over the top with that, because you'll see shows where they like the sleeves taken off, like the Bengal tiger got them, and things just don't look like that.
Yeah, and I guess as well, because you're working in a fictional realm, people would think you can like make it very sensational, and like
That's right.
let's emphasize this and really show that he's
That's right.
taking a big beating. And it's like, but it never necessarily works like that in real life. And especially like bruises, I think, like when you've been hit or something, or you banged it against something, people like show a bruise straight away. It's like that might not come up for like a day or two. Not until you realize when you're like rubbing your arm or something.
People do that right away, and it's too soon. A little
Yeah.
hit. Yes. Right. Good.
And then it's the same with like when you're rubbing your arm and you're thinking, what is this? And it's like, oh, this has come out of nowhere. But as well, like mentioning about the nurse, working with something like a nurse who's like, wow, that's incredible. You really nailed it. That must be quite humbling as well, to be like,
oh my God,
this is somebody who's seen some serious stuff.
It's the best when you have something where people look and go, I believe. It's all you want. I always say that when I'm doing a master class, and I'm doing one in London for the National Youth Theatre, I always just say, do you believe it? If you believe it, whether it's a little wee bit of blood coming from something, or dirt, or broken tooth or something, and people believe it, I'm very happy.
Yeah, and I think as well, like I kind of want to go back and watch scenes now to see, like, do I believe it? How does it look? How can it play out? Just out of curiosity, really. Because you mentioned Spectre before. It's like something like that, where it's like heavy action sequences and like a James Bond, and the way that it's not just
it's not really based in reality. So it's more of a fantasy, a good one, but it's not, it's not quite real the same way. Something like that. I mean, I'd say Skyfall more so, because it was a departure, certainly. But I think when you see those types of shows and films where there's a lot of breakdown of a character, often you want your leading man to look great no matter what. And it's a very fine line, of going overboard. Or I think of things like Nightcrawler, or the way Daniel was in Skyfall till he comes out in the tuxedo and is back to Bond, of that he looks, tired and depressed and injured and hurt. So I think that's what the audience have to believe.
Yeah, and I kind of just want to go back and look at your work now to see like how can you make it believable, even if it is like based in a false reality, but it's also creating that realism for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really admire what people do, like, Tom Savini and all those horror films. It's not my vibe, the Saw movies and, Texas Chainsaw, but they're genre films. I'm not mad at them. They all have a purpose and it's entertainment. But that kind of, like with slit necks and like blood all over. I mean, it's very funny to me, but I don't work in that really. Almost everything I do is based in reality. So it's like, how do you look when your wrist has been cut? How does, Jake Gyllenhaal look when his leg is blown off and stronger? I thought that was really effective and one of the biggest challenges to do, because people don't really understand how things can look, but Man on Fire, I mean, not as severe, obviously. I mean, he's sweaty and a bit bloody, and the girl, but you have Tiago, and what a wonderful actor from Brazil. But just to make him up and do all that sweat and blood, and he's always beat up, and then he progresses because you see him later. But a different director was like, I don't feel I want him so beat up now. I want to focus on the rest of the story. So I had to take some liberty there and kind of clean it up a little. But I think that's a makeup worth looking at. I think Osmar, it's a spoiler, but there's a very unpleasant finale, the very bloody finale, which I love doing because it was so stylized and throwing blood all over the desk. And, I love doing things like that. Random, really random. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and I think as well, like you're mentioning about how being grounded in realism or doing something like Saw, where I feel like it's probably quite fun to do those slit neck stuff, but then also probably a bit difficult. How do you incorporate what you've sort of learned or what you want to do in that whole time as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fascinating, really, and just the different ways that people work in and how they want to portray their work at the same time.
Is the show on Netflix in the UK?
Yes, the show is. Yeah.
All right.
And
well, I just really encourage people to watch and see and
yeah, I think with people that see it, and I think it's interesting as well, like how you're saying, like another director coming in about, I don't want them to be as beat up.
Mm-hmm.
When you're working with other directors, when they have different ideas, how do you juggle between the episodes and what they want? And
well, it's a great question, actually,
Robert.
It's a great question. I'll tell you why. Because not that I've done so much telly. I mean, I started in it, obviously, like everybody does, and trained in it, then left it and had a long career in motion pictures. And then as the industry changed, and I came back a little bit with Moon Knight, which was an amazing experience. I was new to television at that point. I didn't really look at the scripts and understand what 301 means, or I didn't understand. I had been away from it for so long. And you have to retrain, and the way there's very little coverage, and it's like you get one opportunity to do this one makeup, and they're not going to cover it the way they do in a feature with the close-up and a point of view and a master shot. And so I think what I did find a little bit rattling was the continuity. I don't really, I'll get in so much trouble for this, but I don't quite understand why having so many different directors on some television. I know why they do it, but you typically will have two DPs, one preps, the other, but we don't do that with makeup and hair. And we have to prep just as much. So I'd be on the set, for instance, on Man on Fire, and there'd be a meeting for the next episode, and I've got to break away. Luckily, I have Carla Duenas, my great key, and Farfan Hair, that I could say, you're there, I'm going back to take the meeting, or send them to the meeting. But to have another director come in and then they want to change it a bit, and I suffered that a bit on Presumed Innocent, or not so much, but a little. You go, but it's not my show and I'm not the boss. And I think that's where we have to step back. So for all the people out there, designers, makeup designers, hair, even costume, a director will want to bring his or her or their vision, and we have to go along, and I don't always agree. So I think that's a very important thing for people listening, that the director might say. I know for Tiago, he said, no, I really don't want, I can't remember which director that was, Vincente or Michael Cuesta. Like them both very much, but I did sort of hope. And then Stephen Capel, he was all about making them dirtier and more real, and yet he wasn't there when a lot of the stuff happened, and he was more not a showrunner, but a producer. And with all due respect, you're like, yeah, but he's not there the whole time. So how things progress. And Claire Kilner, fantastic, because she does big TV shows with lots of makeup. And she was very good about, we went through each character, she's the only one really. We talked about each character coming onto an episode, and I did a little pitch. This one's going to have a little kind of old-fashioned hair and makeup. He's going to look like this. He's going to be like that. What do you think? Everything. And that's how I think you have to do that, approach it, so that you stay with a look. And I think the directors need to understand our feeling a little bit, because then we're suddenly, it worked. And the Tiago, it worked because he wanted to then move on to focus on the next thing, which was the heart, where they do the insertion of that little piece, which was super complicated. It took a lot of time and thought with 3 or 4 of us and my props and makeup effects. And it took a lot actually to figure that one out. People would never know, but there you have it.
I think with the director thing, I think it's interesting, the blocks that they have, and the point that you make, that is like, there's different directors, DPs, ADs and whatnot, but then like the constant is like hair and makeup, or even set deck or production design and those guys,
right? Which
it does make it an interesting point why they don't do that, but then at the same time people will be out of a job, right? With how many people they'll need to bring in. But it's interesting as well, the different dynamics, how people think about how they want to go through things and how they want stuff to be portrayed. I feel like maybe sometimes that's what's lacking as a director, that you're not thinking about the smaller detail, but you're just thinking about maybe I wouldn't say bigger picture, but you're looking at like all the other puzzle pieces, but you're not looking at one that might be the big missing one. But I've got a couple of questions left. What was the hardest look to design?
I think, well, a couple things. For the Brazil, the guys in the favela was a bit complicated. I mean, so I tested everybody. They came to Mexico City. All the guys, I don't want to get people's name. Jefferson was one of them, but all those guys, with the guy with the leopard spots in his hair. So we had Corey and Farfan. I did a tremendous amount of research. Those guys were hard to do because they look authentic. They are Brazilian, but they're not from Rio. They're not from a favela. We were recreating favela looks, which are very distinct. There's loads of documentation. There's films. I looked to things like City of God and Central Station, which is one of my favorite films. I watched some Brazilian, quite good telly, corrupt police in the favelas. It's really interesting. And I came up with some ideas of how we're going to recreate, especially the hair was particular on those guys, like with a shaved shape through the head. We had some braiding with beading and some shave bits. We had interesting facial hair, some scars, some tattoos, very religious, iconic Brazilian tattoos of the Jesus, that you see in Rio, with the arms up. So I had that tattoo originally made. But I will say we put a lot of time and thought into the Brazilians. I don't think it featured as well in the show as it ought to. That happens. It's, like a costume designer finding a belt or a pair of shoes. But certainly I'm very proud of what we did with there's 1, 3, 4. They're very unique. One with this little mustache and really designed. And I think I was very happy with a couple of the women. We had to send her from one city to another to get these extensive braids done. I really liked the way they looked. We did a lot of work on stunts and things like that because we had to double. We had Kofi, a wonderful stunt performer, doubling Yaya. We had to double Poe. Her look actually was challenging because I would have liked, I really wanted her to have her hair down, but you know, she's a young actress. She's newer, very nice, sweet, very good on the makeup, but makeup shows on her very easily, as it does on a very fair-skinned younger girl. But we had to correct a few things, a few blemishes, as you do, and she was lovely. And it was a no makeup, but her hair felt to me like she wanted to have this little kind of pulled back and put into this thing. And I thought it was a little not right, but I think she convinced me in the end that that's how girls are wearing their hair. And I've looked around actually because I was not sure, and actually she's right. I think I underestimated her knowledge at such a young age of what that should be. And then with Alicia Braga, her makeup had to be like, you know, like policewoman. I don't do any makeup. I do nothing. But you have makeup on. And then her hair, which I really wanted to see her hair be up and down and move, but in that heat, that, and you know, it's textured hair and that hair goes up. And I think that was those things people would never notice, take a lot of time to think it through. And the heat factor and why people would do their hair that way. You watch anybody right now, it's hot here. I watched people yesterday in my class, the women with long hair, all putting their hair up. You know, men with beards and things start to say, I got to cut it off. But yeah, so I'd say that. And then of course, Creasy every day, he's wonderful because yeah, Abdul Mateen, the second, gets in the chair, lets you do it. You do your thing. You can help Nick his barber. I can help him with the beard. We did him in braids and then take them out and go back to his hair. And, you know, subtle, you might just notice little bits and pieces, but he was a wonderful actor to have.
My final question, is there anything else that you want to mention or ask me that I might have missed in my questions on the show?
No, I appreciate you asking me. That's really, really kind of you. No, I just really, I can't say enough about working, you know, for Netflix. And they're not paying me for that, but for working for them, it really made a difference. It was a great, you know, Ed McDonnell and you know, our production manager, Julie Anderson, and Noel Green. They were just really entrusted me. I was concerned, you know, a lot of people of color, did I have the right hair and makeup people working on them? I really worked hard to make sure we were really well represented. We had diversity, we had people of color, we had LGBTQ plus, we had, it really felt like we'd really done this properly. And a lot of people noticed that on my crew. I really enjoyed my crew. I felt that they had my back. I felt like if I had to leave, which I did for a few days to go see my mom, you know, who's 95, I didn't worry. I knew I could leave and everything would be fine. I left for, I don't know, 4 or 5 days, which I've never done, but it's a 6-month shoot. And I thought, this is fine. This is good. They were really happy I came back, but the idea, because I've not felt that. I've been on films where you leave, everybody wants your job. Everybody wants your job. So sometimes it's just nice to be with people who have your back, and they're great crew, and Corey and Nick and actually everybody, you know, Karina and the crew. I mean, the nicest, the driver, Martin Medina, drove me every day. He was just the most lovely person. Like, do you want to stop and buy anything? Do you need groceries? Oh my God, I need this for my room. I need to buy a juicer because I'm on a diet. We took me somewhere, you know, it was really nice.
I think when you have that, as you said, like leaving to go see your mum, which is like, obviously could be a quite stressful time, just because I don't know what's going on. So I'm just going to assume that. It just allows, and then having people have your back, let them just be like, there you go, don't worry, we've got you covered, Donald. If we need anything, we'll let you know. Just
and the
do
show
your
looks
thing.
good. Yeah, the show looks good. I mean, when I look at it now, I go, you know what? That looks good. I'm happy with it. I think we did a good job. We did a great job. We worked many, many hours. The travel time in Mexico City is I mean, it's 24 million people. So you can imagine it's like Tokyo. So getting to and from the set, to and from the studio, minimum hour each way every day, 2 hours in a vehicle. Then you do another 11 hours, 12 hours. So you're shattered 5 days a week, sometimes 6. We had a nice break over the Christmas Hanukkah holiday. Came back in New Year. Went to Brazil. Incredible experience. Wonderful people. So I appreciate your support, and thanks for having me.
No, thank you for taking the time to speak to me. Man of Fire is streaming now on Netflix. Go out and see Donald and his team's amazing work. Thank you again, Donald.
Robert, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
No, thank you. It's nice seeing you again as well. And
well, you too. It's been a minute. Good luck with your new job. Keep me posted.
Thank you so much.
I'll be in the UK tomorrow. I'll be there for about a week. So
we'll have a safe flight as well. And
good luck with the new job. Okay.
Thank you very much. All right. Have fun teaching. Have a safe flight. Bye-bye.
So much.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.